Joint statement from Mary. Okay. As opposed to what do like the Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. Chicago public school teachers and support staff are days away from potentially walking off the job with no end in sight to contract negotiations.
Student voices matter.
We're now got a very big clock that's ticking on both sides. We should come to the table, get these things resolved, but where it's got to start at this point is with the union coming forward with a comprehensive proposal.
The mayor, along with representatives from Chicago Public Schools and the Chicago Teachers Union, continue their contract standoff as a strike looms.
I feel a sense of panic in the White House. You know, for the first time, the public mood about this has changed. For the first time, it's not just smoke, it's the fire that the public can see, and I think the president's reacting as such.
A Chicago area congressman and member of the House Intelligence Committee sounds the alarm as the House impeachment inquiry moves on.
The current system of investing 649 small funds is failing, and taxpayers are paying a high price.
Governor J.B. Pritzker proposes a plan to merge pension funds for suburban and downstate police officers and firefighters. And in sports, Chicago's Major League Soccer team announces a homecoming to Soldier Field from the southwest suburbs. Joining us are Mike Flannery of Fox 32 News, Hannah Leone of the Chicago Tribune, A.D. Quigg of Crane Chicago Business, and Forbes contributor Xavier Pope. Let's get right into it. Hannah, another day today of bargaining by both sides and then press releases by both sides. Are the two sides any closer to a deal now than they were earlier this week?
Well, the city today came back to the Chicago Teachers Union with what they said was their last best and final offer on a certain number of items that included salary. The Teachers Union, meanwhile, continues to say that the salary offer that has been made to them of 16% raises over the 5-year contract term is inadequate if they don't get some of their other needs met. That salary would be inadequate if these teachers are still expected to teach oversized classes.
And so what's, are they close to a compromise on class sizes?
Well, they haven't made a compromise yet, but they're willing to work on that still. The union wants certain class size caps to be lowered. They want the caps to be lowered for kindergarteners, for middle grades, and for high school, and they want those caps to be mandatory, enforceable in the contract. What they have right now, based on the last contract, are caps that are only applicable to younger grades and that are not enforceable.
And so when the mayor says the CTU has not made any kind of realistic counteroffer, is that true or is that bluster?
Well, both sides have been meeting almost every day this week. They have both been going back and forth with counter proposals.
AD Quigg, why is the CTU injecting affordable housing into contract negotiations?
This is part of kind of a broader scope that CTU has taken into this entire bargaining process. They call it bargaining for the common good, where they're saying this is our one shot to improve the working conditions for us as teachers and also for our students and the parents of those kids. Mayor Lori Lightfoot has said over and over, let's stick to the four corners of what is in this contract. Let's talk about affordable housing with the City Council at large. I've appointed a very progressive leader of our new housing department. This is something I'm committed to, but it shouldn't be something that's bargained in this contract.
Mike Flannery, the mayor says the teachers are not taking this seriously. CTU says the mayor's daring us to strike. Is this going to get resolved in the next 6 days?
I doubt it. I mean, it looks like we're likely to have a strike, I think. But, you know, once again, picking up on what AD said, the big picture here, I'd even go back a few more months. The election of Lori Lightfoot was a major humiliation for this union leadership. They had strongly backed Tony Preckwinkle. They're putting a marker down here. The union president, Jesse Sharkey, has said repeatedly that, you know, that this strike is going to transform the labor movement in Chicago and beyond. He's got a lot invested in this.
And the teachers union sees itself as more than just a labor union, but a political action committee. Hannah, when you talk to teachers, do you sense that any of this is about retribution for Tony Preckwinkle losing so big to Lori Lightfoot?
You know, Stacey Davis Gates, the vice president of the teachers union, actually addressed that in a press conference today. She called it offensive, and she said, you know, why don't you ask Lori Lightfoot, the mayor, if this is actually her being petty about us not endorsing her?
Xavier Pope, do you think parents will support teachers if they do walk out, and how long will that support last?
I think it depends on how long the strike lasts, and I also think it's related to what can parents do if there is a strike, in terms of where kids can go and how does it impact their regular lives at home.
And Hannah, the other unions striking here, two factions of the SEIU, Park District workers are going to strike. In the past, the mayor kept the Park District open for kids to go to. What's going to happen now if teachers walk off and Park District workers walk off?
Well, the mayor has said that she plans to keep all schools open on the regular bell schedule, and that they'll have non-union staff and administrators there to make sure that children who don't have another place to go are still taken care of.
AD Quigg, if you had to predict right now, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Don't put me on the spot.
Are they going to resolve this in the next 6 days?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. The posturing right now seems like no, and I think folks close to Lori Lightfoot say they're posturing within the room that no matter what, they're going to strike. But we really don't know. And what both sides say is we want to get this done if we are going to make a deal by Tuesday so that the House of Delegates can meet and confirm. But if not, we could see 35,000 employees hit the street.
And Hannah, go ahead.
Yeah, there is the added pressure on the timeline this time around, as opposed to the 2016 strike when there was like a 11th hour deal, because now the way it would have to happen is the union bargaining team, the union leaders would have to take a proposed deal back to their House of Delegates. They'd have to call an emergency meeting and have their governing body vote on whether or not to approve this deal. And
that's
call
a
off
long
strike.
process.
The practical deadline is probably Sunday or Monday.
Practically, yeah.
If all that's going to get done by Wednesday, is it, or Thursday?
Thursday.
Mike, you know, the mayor is saying that if they do strike, they're not going to make up the days at the end of the year, as they have done in every other strike.
Every other strike. I mean, and that was the internal messaging leading up to this 90% plus strike vote. The internal messaging by the union to its members was, hey, every walkout before any payday that teachers missed got made up in June at the end of the school year. You know, and that's part of that's part of the confidence that's at play here. Lori Lightfoot again is putting a marker down, saying, "Not this time. We'll see." I've heard mayors talk like that before. We'll see. But the union, the internal messaging leading up to the strike was, once we go out, we're not going to come back unless we get that extra payday in June.
So is that supposed to put pressure on teachers to
Well, I mean,
the
yeah.
notion that they're going to get their pay docked?
Right, and look, here's the business model, so to speak, of a teacher's strike. The way it's always worked in the past is, you put the pain on the parents who have to spend hundreds of dollars or even more to get emergency child care, because while the schools are open, there won't be after-school programs. Some parents may not be able to go to work because of this. And the idea is to put so much pain on the backs of the parents that they scream at the alderman and the mayor and force City Hall to cave.
Although typically
We'll
parents
see if it
support
works.
their kids' teachers.
That's absolutely right.
I think that's changed a little bit with the mandate that I think that Lori Lightfoot has come in there and laid down the law in terms of how she's dealt with aldermen, how she's dealing now even with teachers. I think that right now she kind of has a little bit more leverage in terms of the perception as it.
I think everybody agrees. Certainly I do. If I were king of Chicago, I'd pay teachers $1 million a year. There has been, again, I think there's a fundamental misrepresentation by the union leadership about what's happening in the schools. It's not this dystopian hellscape that we sometimes hear of every classroom overcrowded, all these problems. There are problems, yes, but a study in the last couple of years by Sean Reardon, a professor at Stanford, found Chicago public school kids making more progress than the school kids in any other system in the country, any other big city in the country.
That's on test scores and on graduation rate. All right, so Hannah, there's parents that are concerned out there. They might need to make arrangements. What do they need to know 6 days out from this potential strike?
I mean, I guess they would need to know for sure whether or not, teachers are going to go on strike, first of all, and then they can know this. The district has a website up. It's their contingency plan. It's cps.edu/ouroffer, I believe, and that has a list of resources for parents who have questions. The schools will be open on the regular bell schedule, so I guess that is something that would be helpful to know. But whether or not the strike ends up happening, I mean, it's really who can say at this point, because what you have is the city who's kind of sticking to the points that are mandatory bargaining topics like pay and health care, and saying, why aren't you taking our deal? This is a really good offer. This is a historic offer. 16% over 5 years is a significant.
And they're not complaining about the pay.
No, they're not. They're not. Well, what they're saying, though, right, is that it's not enough if they have to teach 40 students.
And the teachers union are putting these other sort of things into the bargaining process.
Yes, there are certain topics that an educational employer like a school district can choose to bargain over if they want to, but they don't have to. And those are things like class time or class sizes and
affordable housing
staffing.
policy,
and
which is
affordable
usually
housing
something
policy.
that's left up to legislation.
Yeah, and the union obviously is trying to stick to those points, because if they were to settle an offer on pay or on another mandatory topic, they'd be knocking out reasons why they can legally strike. So right now it really is in their interest to keep pushing for the things that they really want that are not mandatory things to have in the contract.
We will revisit this in a week when there will either be striking teachers or there will be harmony in a deal. Let's move on to some other top stories from this week. The Inspector General's report into the Laquan McDonald murder reveals Superintendent Eddie Johnson thought that shooting was justified. Illinois Congressmen break with Trump over the Turkish campaign against the Kurds in northern Syria, and Cook County President Toni Preckwinkle says her new 2020 budget proposes no new taxes or fees. Xavier Pope, is Superintendent Eddie Johnson in trouble with the public now that it was revealed in this IG report he thought that shooting was justified?
Absolutely. I think that he saw the video before it was released out to the public a long time ago, and I think that now the public knows that. I think they inherently knew that before.
Right,
But
Tribune reported that in 2016, that within 10 days of the shooting, he had seen that video, and that everyone in the room agreed that it was a justified use of force. But it was really spelled out in this report.
Exactly, and I think that this is just kind of confirmation of what the public thought already.
Mike Flannery, will there be a groundswell of opposition from African American aldermen to convince the mayor to let him go?
We're already hearing it. There was some anger about this. Getting the confirmation, it was certainly reported previously, lots of discussion, but now there's this apparent confirmation by this IG report, and the spokesman for the superintendent has said, well, he was just one voice in the room, he was only a deputy, he wasn't in charge, but aldermen are saying...
but he wasn't really part of the paper trail. I mean, he wasn't,
Correct.
He didn't have to sign off on anything.
Correct. He was just in the room and not in the direct line of command over this. But yeah, there's there's going to be trouble.
A.D. Quigg, is there anything else that we learned from the long-anticipated release of this report that we didn't know from reporting or from the trials?
There's basically a lot of details about what extent officers went to cover up the circumstances around the shooting. We saw one officer allege that there was coffee spilled on a series of reports and he had to rewrite them. We learned to what extent Jason Van Dyke...
the coffee stains, those papers all disappeared.
They were
disappeared.
Right, and they were rewritten.
Yes, and to the extent that Jason Van Dyke kind of covered up misdoings. And it's just the breadth of this, for the first time getting access to these documents from the IG. We only have these documents because City Council agreed to open up a series of IG reports that are of high public interest. We're going to see a few more of these come out on high-profile cases dating back to the Daley era. It's a unique opportunity to kind of see inside.
Does that mean Kochman?
Yes.
The Kochman murder?
Yes.
Mike Flannery, this week, downstate GOP Congressman John Shimkus says he no longer supports Trump. Why do you think Republicans have been quick to criticize him on this imbroglio in Syria, but quick to defend him on Ukraine?
And Shimkus pointed to the withdrawal of American fighters from that border area in northern Syria that Turkey's now invading.
The U.S. is now stabbing the Kurds, who have been allies of the U.S. in the fight against ISIS. They're stabbing them now in the back.
I think because the veteran congressmen and people like Lindsey Graham, who is another one, is taking that same tack. I think they know some of these special forces officers, and they're in touch. And the military's very upset about it. I know a former Navy SEAL who was over there in Mosul, who's extremely upset about what's going on. And you know, Hillary Clinton actually mentioned Shimkus today. She was in Park Ridge at her alma mater, Maine South, talking to the students, and she said, she referenced the impeachment she worked on in the early 70s when she was a young staffer involving then President Richard Nixon, and she said, we had a lot of bipartisan support. She didn't mention her own.
Witnessed another impeachment.
Yeah, she didn't mention her husband's impeachment, but she says it was, she says it's time for Republicans to step forward, and then she mentioned Shimkus, and she says, but he's leaving. She says, I'd like to see some Republicans step forward who are, and who say they don't support Trump anymore, who are going to stay in the game. I don't think a lot of that's going to happen. I really don't. And as I said here a few weeks ago, again, I still don't see 67 U.S. senators voting to remove the president from office, no matter what the polls.
Although the stories come out by the hour out of Washington, it's hard to keep track. A.D., the Cook County Board President reveals her budget this week. $838 million deficit at the city. At the county, everything's great. How could that be?
It's a good news budget. Toni Preckwinkle says she's been doing hard work over the past 9 years of her tenure to make structural differences in the budget without raising taxes this year. We're going to see deficits grow a little bit in the out years. They are adding about 200 staff on the county side, but cutting 600 vacancies at the health system.
But it was so bad a couple years ago. She needed the sugar tax or the soda tax.
Well, they did.
Or the
They
pop
cut.
tax,
They cut quite a bit
as we say here in Chicago.
the pop tax.
They cut 2,000 jobs, didn't they?
They cut a lot of jobs at the.
So they've structurally fixed whatever structural deficit they had.
We're going to see the deficit grow a little bit in the out years, but they're saying, yeah, we made a lot of tough choices, and they started this June. They said, you know, our structural deficit is down to only $18.5 million, and isn't that a great news budget? But the thing we have to watch for in the out years is uncompensated care at the health system,
Which the Inspector General says is going to be unpayable pretty soon.
Yes, he has said we're seeing growing deficits at the end of the year at the health system. The health system has kind of gone back and forth with the IG about how accurate his math is, but what the health system will say is uncompensated care is growing by hundreds of millions of dollars a year, to the point where they think they might not be able to live up to their mission, which is to provide care regardless of a patient's ability to pay.
All right, let's move on to some other political headlines this week. Illinois State Senator Martin Sandoval resigns as chairman of the state's Transportation Committee today as new details emerge about his and suburban federal raids. Governor Pritzker proposes merging hundreds of downstate pensions into two statewide funds, and Mayor Lightfoot is floating the idea of a tax on rideshare vehicles as part of the downtown congestion fee in her 2020 budget. Hannah Leone, if there is a new rideshare tax on solo riders, will that A, raise enough money to make a dent in the budget gap, and B, hurt the rideshare industry?
I don't know if it'll make a dent in the budget gap, but I know it might affect, my personal choices. Might be more likely to take pool more often, report.
Pool is where you ride with
Yeah,
other customers.
yes. So yes, his tax rate, if I understand it correctly, it's possible that it would just affect solo riders and not the pool option where you can share a ride with other people. So
Which tends to be cheaper, much cheaper
yes,
anyway.
much
than the,
cheaper,
than
more environmentally friendly.
But Mike Flannery is usually taking the big black limo option.
No, I usually take Metro when I, go back and forth
Public
on
transit,
those. But I'll tell you, the mayor says this is modeled on a levy that they imposed in London that I think a study showed did actually reduce. It had the effect of reducing the traffic congestion somewhat, and I'm not sure whether it moved people back to public transit, but that's also.
Well, she's saying it's a first step toward a possible commuter tax in Chicago. AD,
Right.
do we know how a commuter tax would even work? Would there be toll booths? Would there be an iPass type device?
Right, there's a few ways she can go about it. There are 4 big international cities that have instituted a similar congestion tax. You could do plate readers, which we know the city of Chicago is very good at. You could set up toll booths going into the loop. You could start, like we said, on ride hailing because they're all GPS enabled and we know exactly when they get into the central business district. There's a few ways they can go about it. Lightfoot says she wants to study it first. But I think in this budget, we will see some kind of variable pricing that tries to incentivize people to take pool or to take public transit.
Mike Flannery, this week, the federal search warrant into the office of Martin Sandoval was unredacted. Did we learn anything new as to what the feds are looking at?
The big picture, Paris, is we learned that just like that investigation in the city council, where the feds recorded 14,000 conversations of Alderman Danny Solis and thousands of other conversations, and that's just broad gauged, going in a dozen different directions simultaneously. This state-focused investigation involving Sandoval, also, it's now clear from this warrant that it involves all sorts of other people. I mean, 4 Commonwealth Edison Exelon executives. They're apparently, they wanted information about a rate increase that the Exelon ComEd got. There are Jeff Tobolsky, the suburban mayor,
County commissioner.
County commissioner, who we knew was involved in this.
Mayor of McCook, population 220 something.
Well, there's a major Cub terminal, which is in his city, is one of the things on the list. I made a list of all the names that were mentioned in this unredacted report. It was about this long.
A lot of names, a lot of companies. A gaming company.
Lobbyists, yeah. It was
this
a lot of dots to connect.
The video poker machine guy.
Video gaming
We've got
terminals.
this guy Mike Vondra, who's the asphalt king
Asphalt,
of
cement,
Illinois.
video gaming,
I mean,
Exelon.
Every group and organization and industry that reporters who sit around sipping a beer or a glass of wine have speculated about. It looks like the feds are turning over rocks in all those areas.
And maybe they don't know exactly what they're going to find. AD, will the state save a lot of money, or will municipalities save a lot of money if all their beleaguered pension funds get combined into one?
That is what the governor is hoping. So the proposal that came out this week is that downstate should basically merge all of the investment functions of about 650 police and fire pensions downstate. They're saying if we merge everything together, we can get much better investment returns, take much bigger swings at investments. They're not merging the administrative side, and there's nothing in there about Chicago.
So there would still be all
County
these different pension boards?
Yes, it
Well,
seems
that's
that way.
interesting. There are a lot of jobs involved there. I've got to cut you off because we've got to move to sports. The Bears licked their wounds after a disappointing loss in London. After leaving for more than a decade, the Chicago Fire Major League Soccer team returns to Soldier Field. And with Joe Madden out of the picture, the Cubs continue their search for a new manager. Xavier Pope, what happened to the Bears last weekend?
They just were out-coached, and the Raiders were there for a week ahead of time before the Bears. I
didn't understand that. The Bears flew there on Friday. They had one day to get acclimated to the time change.
Yeah, the Raiders were just flat out. They had more energy, were more prepared. The defense did not show up this time around to bail out Chase Daniel. They were just flat out out-coached.
Is there any chance they can turn around their offense in the next part of the year?
I mean, they need to get their running game going. They're not consistent. The 2 running back team they have right now is not doing the job. And we don't know what's going to happen next from here. But they're 3-2, only one game behind the Packers at 4-1. The Packers got to a hot start. We'll see what happens next.
But they have that loss against the Packers already.
Yeah, and actually that's on the road.
And it was home.
That was home.
The Bears were home.
Yeah,
right, Packers
for
won
the
on the road.
Packers, but another game against the Packers in December.
All right, so apparently Joe Girardi met with Cubs brass for 8 hours the other day. Is he the front runner to take over?
I think he's the front runner. Girardi's name was floated out before Joe Madden took his position.
Oh, years and years and years ago.
And I think this is something that Cubs fans actually want. They would be satisfied with the choice post
A former Cub.
Absolutely.
But his style is different. He's kind of a disciplinarian, whereas Joe Madden was the hippie, anything goes guy.
And I think that's perfectly fine. I think that's when you look at Theo Epstein's rhetoric at the beginning of the season, talked about this year of reckoning. I think that's the style of manager that he may be looking for post Madden.
But what about that roster? They need to make some roster changes.
Yeah, they need to make some roster changes, but they need to be able to approach differently what they do as a franchise. They didn't press teams, didn't put pressure on pitchers. They had a lot of injuries. So those are some issues that they need to fix as a ball club.
I have the Sox fans watching right now are falling asleep. But we're going to move on to the Chicago Fire. They're playing at Soldier Field now. Is that going to boost their popularity in the Chicago region?
I just think that there will be in a central area a lot of tourists will be able to make it out to the game. I think it will significantly increase their visibility in the city.
What do we expect from the Blackhawks as they start their year?
I don't know what to expect this year. I mean, last year they didn't make the playoffs. A lot of pieces they need to fix there. I mean, I don't really know what fans really think that the Blackhawks are going to do. Are they going to make the playoffs this year? I can't really bank on that.
What about the Bulls? Are they going to make the playoffs?
Absolutely not. The Bulls are not going to make the playoffs. We have no idea what Garpax is doing. This franchise is absolutely.
I was watching a preseason game, and I have to say, I didn't know most of the players.
I'm pretty sure that every fan probably needs to actually see the program. You need the program to go to games this time.
Yeah. Mike Flannery, what do we need to know about the White Sox in the offseason?
There are some pieces missing. I mean, they got pitching trouble, and they didn't spend big. They've got some money they can spend in the offseason, and fingers crossed.
They got pitchers coming back from injury. Michael Kopech.
Yep. Yeah.
They have young talent. I think that the White Sox are still on the right track. They have Tim Anderson, a star they can bank on. The Major League Baseball should definitely put some more.
Oh my God! And Anderson, though, he's a guy who could be the face of this ball
club.
Franchise. He and his wife taking those kids to the Civil Rights Museum in Atlanta. I mean, this is a guy who, Major League Baseball should make him. He could be the commissioner one day.
All right. Well, we are out of time. So Mike Flannery, Hannah Leone, A.D. Quigg, Xavier Pope, thank you all. And we'll see you on the next edition of the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. Xavier, I've heard some sports reporters talking about the next stop for Joe Madden. Would it be kind of weird if he supplanted Rick Renneria one more time like he did 5 years ago?
And why not? You get a championship in a way.
You think so? I mean, would he be a good choice for the White Sox? Is Renneria safe?
I don't necessarily think he's safe. I don't necessarily think that fans think that he is the future of the franchise in terms of managing the ball club. So
where's Madden going to wind up?
He might wind up in San Diego. You never know. You never know.
Would you just pick for weather at that point?
Absolutely.
I would pick for weather. Why not?
He won a World Series with the Chicago Cubs. At this point,
it's like, I'm out of here.
Right. Doesn't matter what happens next. Might as well go to the place that has the most perfect weather in the United States.
It's a great city, man.
So Renneria, you think is...
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices. Robert Clifford is the honoree of this year's Illinois Bar Foundation's annual fundraising event that raises money to enhance the availability of justice for those without attorneys throughout the state.